But the true catch here is what it's going to be in the future. That's more of a feeling. 2 years down the road, you're going to have a nice big lift. You're still getting 7,100 a month.
Yeah.
So it's crazy cash flow.
Seif, like, I think you're most famous for generational living. You start building additional dwelling units, legal duplexes in 2016. So how does that journey translate fast forward 7 years now? Like, how does that look now?
So I think in 2016, there was a lot more opportunity available because housing wasn't as crazy as it is today. It was really easy to sort of split a home up and rent out a basement, and interest wasn't that high. So that was lucrative enough for a lot of people, and it increased the value of the home. Now it's not so simple to make that kind of returns.
100%.
So from an investment standpoint, you have to do a lot more. So 2 units is sort of just the break even.
Yeah.
So you're lucky if you're even breaking even with a separate unit downstairs and another unit upstairs. Now you got to do things like splitting it into a triplex, or what's become really popular in the last couple of years is ADUs or laneway houses, garden suites.
Yeah,
they're effectively all the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's that you're adding another 3rd unit at the back of the home. And sometimes it could be partially attached to the home as well.
Yeah.
So those ones are a lot more lucrative because let's say in our market, in the Hamilton market, you can get a single family home, call it for 650,000. And if you were to turn it into a duplex and do the separate basement and everything, it may be worth an extra 100. But then if you do the garden suites, you're getting, 2 units in the home. And then you're getting another unit in the back for a laneway house. And then things like that rent for about $7,000 a month.
Wow.
Versus the single family home, which was probably only going for $2,800.
Yeah. It's very funny because like we're filming here in Bowmanville, our studio here. We actually built an ADU right in town, right? I can get into like how much money I spend. You can critique that, laugh at me, how much you can save and all that. But the goal was originally I thought when I have a kid with my wife, we can live in the back, let the legal duplex at least carry most of the mortgage, right? And then, fast forward, we spend like $500,000 just building the house in the back. Is a big lot, 53 by 200. We built all the fences and all that, but we end up thinking we're probably never going to move in because of our culture. We can go anywhere and we don't have the in-law support that's in the city. So now we just rent out on Airbnb and making double to triple of the long-term rent.
Yeah, it's true.
So in a hindsight, I know you have some story to share. I'm gonna ask you about that story, but we bought it right at the highest point, right? February, 2021, right? 2022, yeah, February 2022, right? Right at the high, put in a lot of money to build it. Now turn around. If we rent it long term, we're probably barely, maybe $1,000 all, legal duplex and not 1,000, 2,000. Because of Airbnb, we're getting a lot more cash flow. And that's the way I see it that it works, right?
Short-term rental is very lucrative, and it's also, but short-term rentals is what turns a real estate investment from a long-term rental to almost a business.
Yeah.
Because now you have to worry about the customer, right? Now your guests, their opinions really matter. If you're not a super host, that Airbnb is not doing too well.
Yeah.
So now you got to run it like a business.
Correct. I'm just lucky that way because I personally don't know much about Airbnb. But our Airbnb become the super host in 1 month. And now we have like 33 super hosts, and they're like the community's guest favorite on Airbnb's list. So I get where you're coming from. It's almost like into a mini hotel.
Yeah.
You're not running so much an investing business. It's like a day-to-day business. And we're hiring a COO to take over that for us to be able to scale up, right? And all that.
Yeah. And it's definitely, it's a good thing to do because, again, like I said, part of probably what makes you successful with the whole getting the superhost status and everything really quickly is that you're able to, you're able to listen to your customer, you're able to listen to your guest and then do meaningful changes. And sometimes meaningful changes, like, you know how it is. Guests complain about the silliest thing, but rightfully so. It's like when you stay in a hotel, they may have slept a bit funny and the bed squeaks.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden that's your problem. If you were a long-term tenant, that none of that
take care of
stuff
your own
matters.
furniture, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So do you like coming back to this whole generational living thing. I know you're a builder, right? You have, offline we talk about you have 20 people under your T4 and a lot more under subtrades, right? So you see a lot more things that we don't see. So what are the things that you see that's in trend that people are gravitating towards?
I think people are really interested in how to get into this space, and a lot of people don't exactly know how.
Mm,
The government's made it really easy from a zoning standpoint for you to start doing this, but most people still want to dabble around, see, okay, what's it going to cost? I want to know the exact details. Where am
mm,
I going to have this bathroom? How
mm,
big is this kitchen going to be? Get
mm,
into like the fine details before getting started. And I think when something is this early, and then when it's more lucrative, is when an opportunity is as early as it is right now. So
mm,
I would say, a lot of people could get into it, and
mhm,
odds are they don't, because they overthink and they overanalyze things.
mm. So what's your answer to that then? All those common question people ask. How much does it cost? How big is it going to be? How much rent you're going to get, right? That's probably the most
Yeah.
common question.
So okay, that's a really good question. So if you have an existing structure on the back of your property, because many of the properties do in older neighborhoods, they'll have like an abandoned garage that nobody's been using, and you can retrofit that into an ADU. You'll spend, I would say, on average for a 500 square foot space, maybe 600
One
square foot
floor,
space,
just
one
one floor.
floor.
Okay.
Yes, an
That's kind
existing
of like
shell.
a condo studio,
Yeah.
one
Yes,
bedroom.
exactly.
Right now, the condo is going for 300 square feet. I saw some of the new builds. I think eventually that'll come back, but yeah, 600 is probably like a 20 years ago, one bedroom condo, right?
You're
20
right.
year built 20 years ago.
You're right. Yeah. So I would say that would average $120,000.
All,
Really?
Retrofit.
all in. Oh, retrofit
Just
front
so
garage.
you are
Okay.
exactly, you already have a shell.
Okay.
Now, if you're building brand new, do not be prepared to spend any less than $250,000.
Now you make me feel better because mine is 500,000. Everyone's laughing at me. I'm like,
No, if it's bigger, it could be. That's fine.
Yeah.
yeah.
And you know what?
And we have a
People will
basement too. We have a 10 feet
There you
basement,
go.
right?
And it
That's-
depends when you bought too. Like if it was 2022, like
No, we're talking about construction costs here.
yeah, I know. I'm saying it depends like the price of the materials and everything. You have to factor that in as well.
That basement on its own is probably $70,000, $80,000. I don't know how many square feet it is,
Yeah.
but like
Yeah,
all that stuff
eight-
adds
about
up. It's a house.
950, 950 square feet. Yeah.
Okay.
950 square
Each
feet.
floor. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you might be around $80,000 or $90,000 just on that basement. So $500,000 all of a sudden doesn't sound like it's that much, because people hear the number and they get sticker shock. They're like,
Yeah.
oh no, I can get it for cheaper. Let me go on HomeDepot.ca and
DIY.
see how much a bag of concrete is, and see how
Yeah.
much the rebar is. No, if you're planning on building new, you're not building for less than 250,000.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And people think it's a lot.
And
of
they don't
money.
even have a basement. They haven't even dig, right? Do they
You're
need to
right.
dig, or you're putting a slab on grade kind of thing?
250 is usually a slab with
Yeah.
piles, so you're not excavating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because when you got to excavate, you got to dispose all that. That
Yeah,
adds
yeah.
up very quickly.
Yeah. Does Hamilton allow you to build ADU with basement,
Yes,
but no one's doing it?
some people are.
How do they rationalize that? Whether they have a basement, they don't have a basement.
I don't exactly know, because I'll tell you why. Because the problem is the comps, right? So
Yeah.
you have to make a decision about what feels right and what makes financial sense.
Mm-hmm.
The problem right now is there's no comparables. So
Because no
people have
one's
a very-
selling their
nobody's
Yeah.
selling them, but
Yeah.
also the lenders are not accepting the appraised values.
Correct.
And also
A lenders don't, but commercial lenders, they will. They
very
will.
few, only
Yeah,
two or
very
three.
few. Talk to me if you need some help. I don't get any commission from or referral fee, but I'm just trying to help. I work a lot on appraisals and who to work with. So carry on.
You're right. So the A lenders, it's a definite no-go at this stage. That doesn't mean
Yeah.
it's not going to be a go in the future, right? There's very few B lenders, maybe 2-3 B lenders right now that are going to refinance garden suites. But then they're only going to refinance it at whatever value they get from the appraisal. And the appraisers have limitations as to how much they can appraise it. So you only end up getting 50 or 60 cents on the dollar for your construction. That's how much your appraisal is going to go up by. So if you do a $200,000 build, you're only getting an increase in value of 100,000 to 120,000.
Mm-hmm.
So for most people, they're going to say, well, this doesn't make any financial sense. Well,
Yeah.
let me build less. Why build more?
Mhm.
But the true catch here is what it's going to be in the future. That's more of
Yeah.
a feeling.
That's what we're banking on,
Yes,
right? Why do I
exactly.
build 2-story? Because I think the zoning is going to change really fast. Right now, they only allow legal duplex with an ADU, but in the future, quickly that same zoning could be a fourplex,
Mhm.
could be eightplex. So I just block it off. We already have a door from the back, right? Block it off just like a legal duplex. Now I have 2 legal duplex.
So does it
That's the
take
way I look at it.
does it take longer to see that ROI than like if you're doing like a buy and hold? So with an ADU, like how long? What's that time frame look like for you to see that like return on your investment?
I think you're gonna recoup. So immediately when it's done, let's say month number 12, the
Yeah.
whole process, you buy it, and then on your first year,
Mhm.
I would say you might recoup a little bit less of each dollar spent.
Okay.
But then your lift is going to be a bit higher in the future. So 2 years down the road, you're going to have a nice big lift.
Yeah.
Versus if you were just doing a typical duplex that already has the full comps in the market, there's not much of a second lift happening in 2 years' time. It's just a gradual growth. If the market grew 5%, your duplex is up 5%.
Yeah, for sure.
But the garden suite's not going to be like that because there's just value sitting there.
Yeah, 100%. So out of curiosity, like what got you to go into that niche? Because it's not typically something that I've come across when like I'm networking with people being into like ADUs and converting garden home suites. Like what sparked that?
It's a low-hanging fruit for us.
Yeah.
We're contractors and we've been doing a variety of different projects, some much, much, much more complex, and including abandoned buildings, abandoned houses. And to take those and then convert them sometimes into nice single family homes, but most of the time into investment properties
Yeah.
where you're splitting them up. So we're already doing these duplexes, triplex, fourplex, and then apartment buildings, 8 unit, 16 unit, so on and so forth.
Are you actually building the new build?
No, retrofit. Those
Retrofit.
apartment buildings are retrofit.
You go from units to units, right?
Yes.
Let's say 30, 40K per unit. Just go
Those are
from
more
the
for the facelift ones. Those ones are really easy. But the ones I'm talking about is if let's say you buy a building, it's got 6 units in there. You fully got it. Take down the demising walls, take down everything, and rebuild it from scratch because those units, odds are they're too big. You make them a bit smaller, and then squeeze in 8 units, squeeze in 10 units. So there's more value add right there.
Gotcha. Wow. So, like, besides this contractor business you're doing, what are you doing personally in the current situation? What are you seeing the smart money is doing?
I'm seeing that a lot of people are getting really creative about buying property for very little money down. And that's
What do you
something
mean by that?
that's something that a lot of people are doing even better than I am. So I'm also buying real estate personally, but some people that are a lot like just strictly focused on real estate are buying property with very little money down. Now, what does that mean? They're negotiating with a lot of the sellers, vendor take back mortgages, and
BTBs?
things of yeah, exactly, and things of that sort.
Mhm.
Now, I don't do this day in, day out, right? I don't strictly focus on purchasing property and buying and selling and make every single best bang for our buck. But
So you're focusing on flipping. That's what you're saying.
my focus is actually buy and hold. It's
Buy and hold,
long term.
okay.
So I'm less concerned with maximizing the dollar that much because the value creation for me is holding on to it long term.
Mhm.
sure.
The
2 years.
slow money. The slow money.
3 to 5 years as a start and then
Yeah.
the 10-year. I don't really care what happens in the next year or 3 years. But for a flipper, that'll kill the deal.
Mm.
Because for a flipper, you got to have the immediate value and you got to sell it
Yeah.
because odds are that property may not cash flow for that long. So in this interest rate environment, a year from today, that might be a project that's all in the red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like to focus on those. I focus on more creating value.
So what do you
long-term
buy?
Value.
What have you buy recently?
So last year I bought 2 properties that both have potential for a garden suite, and then I ended up completely gutting the 2 homes, turning those into a duplex, and then adding garden suites in the back. So they're both done now. So now each one. So when I got it on the market, let's say one of them would have rented for $2,500 a month, the other one rented for $2,800 a month. Now one rents for $7,100 and another one is like $6,850 or $6,900.
So like the legal duplex and the ADU in the back
Together.
all together.
Yes.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Actually, one of them, I'm giving long-term rent values, but in reality, one
Yeah,
of them's an Airbnb, so it makes
Yeah.
it
I know the Airbnb side because we're
Yes.
doing it. So yeah, we're pushing higher for sure. But then just by putting a legal duplex and ADU and the ADU is about 500 to 600 square feet.
Yes.
How much are you renting that for?
All 3.
No, the
the
ADU
one.
itself.
Long-term rent, $2,000 a
Long-term.
month. Airbnb, $3,000 to $3,300.
Okay. And does that help your property to be positive cash flow now?
No, definitely. Yes. Even all three long term, it'll still be fine because a property like that will get valued at today's lower prices. It'll get valued at about 900 to 920.
Mm.
So, you're carrying a mortgage of, call it low to mid 700s.
Mhm.
So something like that these days with these rates is about 4,000, 4,500 a month, something like that. So 7,000 no matter what is good.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Interesting.
That's very good. And do you think, like, how much you bought those property a year ago for? 600, 700?
No, I didn't buy it at the absolute low.
Work
So
out
I'm
the
not-
number for us. I know that.
I'm
I feel
not
like,
a-
feel like an
yeah.
Andrew Hines podcast style. Like, work out a number for us because people are still interested, right? And once work those number out, they're probably going to go out and try to find a similar project
Yeah.
and trying to see if you can help them out building them, right? So
So I'll tell you one of the last one I did. So the last one I did, I bought, I think it was around 715
in Hamilton, up on the mountain.
Hamilton, up on the mountain. Yes.
Okay, cool.
And then I put about 200 into it.
Okay,
Obviously, I get to put a lot less than what the average person would because I'm in the
200
business.
in for the legal duplex and the ADU.
Yes.
Oh my god!
Yeah. So it's a bit of an advantage.
So you save on the
A
GC,
bit.
you save on the labor cost kind of
Yeah.
thing. You're
Yeah.
probably building at cost, right?
Yeah. This is at cost. This is at cost.
At cost, yeah.
But
That's
you know what?
amazing.
For everybody else that's listening, and if they're looking how they can implement it, I don't want to give unrealistic numbers. So say
What's a more realistic number that
say
Yeah.
it's 250.
the most common quotes that you give out for converting to legal duplex and then building the ADU? What are the most common numbers?
It depends what's needed.
Yeah.
Let's say for that exact 200, a service like that would cost, call it about 240, 250.
Mhm.
Okay. So you buy a property for 715, you put about 250 into it.
Hmm.
Okay. The property is then valued at 915. That's how much it came in at.
Mhm.
So you'll see you're not exactly recouping all your money.
Mhm.
But when all is said and done, you might have 100 or 120,000 still tied into the deal,
Mhm.
which is completely fine because again,
Mhm.
the benefit of the garden suite is long term.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the true value is going to be created. And in the meantime, it's not like you don't get to benefit at all. You're still getting 7,100 a month.
Yeah.
So it's crazy cash flow. Normally, you won't get that much cash flow if you're doing the full refinance on it, right? Like if this thing was worth $1 million, 1.1,
Mhm.
now that cash flow is gone. So you're going to enjoy that for a few years. And then in a couple of years, once there's more comparables, you're going to get a nice big lift.
Mm. Mm, mm. So it's still kind of even like you said with the legal duplex, we're negative cash flow. With the garden suite, you're barely 500 to 1,000
Yeah.
net
With the
cash
du-
flow, right?
Not
With the current rate.
Look, with the current rates, duplex is almost break even, more or less. Like just depending how good you pick it up. And
If
how
you
much
buy
put
it out
into
now, right? If you buy it like right at the hype, then you're probably
Correct.
upside down.
Yeah. Like obviously, if you took a hit on the market, you took a hit on the
Yeah.
market. So
Yeah.
for example, I didn't buy at the lows because that property you can purchase now for 650. I bought for 715. So, but that's
Yeah.
on me.
It's not bad. That's not that bad. It's only 50,000 more.
Why? Because I'm into long-term investing.
Yeah.
If you were a short-term flipper, you're kind of screwed,
Oh, you're very screwed.
right? Because now $70,000 is a lot of money.
100%. Yeah. It's all about the strategy. So if you're long term buy and hold, like you
Yes.
have the time to recoup that loss. So it's not like it's going to hit your wallet as hard. But if you want to be risky and do a quick flip, then yeah, that's going to hurt you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like off the record, like you share experience of when you were trying to flip a house, you bought it right at the hype. Can you kind of share that story with us? Because I think a lot of people can relate to that. And also, what
Yeah.
did you do to get out of it, or is still holding it? Right?
Okay, that's a good question because actually, yeah, I did. So I bought one very similar, a garden. It also had a garden suite in the back, but I bought it maybe a year and a half ago. So
Almost at the
call
hype,
it-
same as
Yeah.
me.
Yes.
High five.
Yes, exactly. So early to maybe Q1, maybe Q2, 2020.
That's already better than me. Like, because I read a Q1, right?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So the dip was way too small back then.
Yeah.
I bought it for 770.
Yeah.
Exact same property.
Yeah.
I put about 250 into it, and 250 is my cost.
Yeah. It's your cost.
And then it was worth 910 when I was done.
Yeah.
So I
So
didn't recoup enough, like nowhere near enough. So I had way too much money
one
tied into the
third,
deal.
maybe. Took 1/3 of the construction cost back.
Yes, very little.
Yeah.
So when I did that, your question was, what did I do? I ended up turning that unit into an Airbnb
Fist bump here.
Nice. Nice.
Right?
Great minds think alike, man.
Yes.
What else are you gonna do, right? I mean, you're not gonna sell it right at the
Yeah.
No.
lowest point. There's
You
no
have to
point
adapt to the
because
market.
we know 5 years down the road, we're gonna look back, everyone think we're genius.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully, we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, 10 years.
Yeah. 10 years, definitely. 10 years, anybody's going to be saying, oh my God, you own a property.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, this is how it's going to be because it's always difficult to get your foot in the door now more than ever. So now for you
100%.
to get your foot in the door, think a generation ago, it wasn't that hard. Save a few paychecks, maybe for a year, maybe for 2 years. And now you have enough down payment to buy a house. Fantastic. And you just sit on it. And then they made an absolute killing. Now you got to be more savvy. You got to house hack. You got to sacrifice maybe your standard of living a little bit better.
100%.
If you imagined yourself to be yourself, living in a home, kind of, completely secluded, you're not with family or anything and just completely independent, you have to dial that back a little bit. If it's yourself and a spouse, you thought you're going to have this beautiful house together. No, you got to house hack, split it up, rent out the basement, maybe do a unit in the back.
100%.
Everybody roll up their sleeves because the hardest thing about investing in real estate is starting. So entering and getting your foot in the door is the absolute hardest part. Once you're in, now you're riding the wave with the market. So the market is helping you.
No, for sure. And even I'm from London and I'm starting to see that my age group, there's very few people I know that have purchased a home. And you have
Good
to.
for you, Nada.
Thanks, man. I try my best. Thankfully, I was working at the bank at the time, and I found out about cashback mortgages. So that was how I finessed my way with $0 down. But not too many people know about that. You kind of have to be.
Is that still available?
Oh yeah, it was a great.
Tell our audience how does that cashback?
Well, I mean, do your own research and don't trust me because I've been out of the bank for a while. But basically, what it was is you purchase a home, and then upon closing day, you get 5% of the price of the home in cash. So essentially, what I did was I put 5% because at the time I was still just graduating university, so I wanted to keep my capital for an emergency, emergency fund. So I put down 5%, and immediately on closing day, I got 5%. So right away, I basically purchased the house at $0 down. The stipulation, though, is for every percent of cash back you take, it's 0.2% to your interest rate. So at a time where people were paying, let's say 1.8, maybe 2.4, I know it makes me cry when I think about that. I was paying around 3 to 4%, which wasn't really bad for me at the time.
I thought the math doesn't work out. I thought it's every 0.2%.
Well, it depends. Sometimes at 2, I forget, it was 2.5
because you're high
maybe.
risk, right? You're high
yeah,
risk.
it's high risk. They have to bring it up 1%. But I remember it was between let's just say 2 to 3%. I was paying 3 to 4. But for me, it made sense because it was do I want to put money towards my mortgage and let's say 50% is going to interest or towards, a landlord where 100% is going towards them. At least I was building 50% equity at the time. So if you haven't looked into it, you definitely should. It's a good starter.
Is there certain banks that allow that or all banks have that?
I know.
Which bank did it with?
So CIBC does it.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they still do it because I think they were trying to phase it out, but I would look into that. I know RBC does it up to 7%. So that one you can get a little bit more with it. But I had to adapt. I had to adapt to the market. I knew that it was not going to work out if I were to just put my money down. And I remember at the time, everyone was like, you need to put 20% to avoid insurance. I'm like, man, just get in the house and just be quiet. Just get something now, before it's just gone.
And you have to pay the CMHC premium on top.
For sure. But at the time, it was I just graduated university. I have enough money to buy a house. Yeah, I might have a premium, but at least I'm building equity, and ever since then, I've never regretted that decision ever. Yeah.
I think that was a really good decision. I really gonna give you that. Just for people who are listening, Nada and I have a very friendly competition, but I seldom give Nada credit. This is the one I think a lot of people benefit from.
I cherish it forever. Cherish it
Same
for
as,
life.
What are you guys talking about? Not just our podcast relationship. So I think a lot of people, even though the rate is higher, even though there's CMHC insurance premium on top, but I think people, if you're trying to get in the door, try to get in the door with your partner or with your brother or with your sister, whatever, now could still be a good time because if the rate is high, right? There's a rumors that they're gonna cut the rate 6 times this coming year. Feds just came out. It's a rumor, okay? So don't shoot me if it didn't. I don't have the crystal ball. But Feds came out and say 2024 we're gonna cut rate 6 times.
Yeah.
So they just overshot it again. We don't know, but Now could be a good time if you can qualify and get in, because when the rate comes down, I think the market continue to go up, especially in Canada, because the supply demand just way off, right? Even if people cannot afford a house, they will team up with your family member or friends. In the future, it might just be a crowdfunding only real estate thing.
Yeah.
Right. Do you agree with that? Say?
I do. I think that a lot of people now have to be realistic in terms of how to get in the market.
Yeah.
If you don't own a property today, don't have this, dream that, okay, one day the prices are going to come down and then I'll be able to afford. Because guess what's going to happen, or not the prices, sorry, but the interest rates.
Yeah.
Guess what's going to happen when the interest rates going to come down? Price is going to shoot back up.
Yeah.
100%.
So it's always difficult to get into the market. It's not only a factor of the interest rate. It's not only a factor of the cost.
Yes.
Right now, to get into the market, everybody's got to hold hands type of thing. I have a tenant. They have good income. It's a couple. And they rented the upstairs unit, which is a 4-bedroom. I was thinking, I'm like, why do they need 4 bedrooms for it? They have like one little kid.
Yeah.
I found out later that they end up subleasing 2 of the bedrooms.
Wow.
And subleasing rates, in Hamilton go for $850 a room. So now their $2,900 a month rent is less. $850 times 2, $1,700.
Yeah.
They probably only pay $1,200 in rent.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So people got to get savvy, and people like that, hats off to them. They're gonna do well because they're taking advantage of the current market.
100%.
The current market is difficult, so now you're taking more than what you could typically afford, and you're giving a piece out.
Yeah.
Now you get to live in a 4-bedroom house, and they have 2 occasional where people are sort of coming in and they're sleeping in those bedrooms. They're students. They're not even all year. They've drastically reduced their rent.
I think people just got to get creative and delay the gratification. Like I remember starting from 23 to 29 years old, I was renting a room for $600. That's how I was able to afford my first house. That's how I was able to, I was driving a Honda, I was saving up everything. But that house, I think, drastically changed my trajectory of my entire life, because I sold that place in 2022, right at the hype. I net, because that was a principal residence, right? I net about $500,000 net. So probably more than that. But
I think it's
with that, then you split up all of it, right? Some into my trading account for people who doesn't know, right? I teach about stock option investing. I was featured on TD Bank 3 times. And then some goes back into real estate, right? So all just snowballs.
Yeah.
So if you haven't get in, it's not going to get easier.
Yeah.
If the rate goes up, the price goes down, guess what? You can't qualify. You need more income.
Yeah.
I've never had as much of a time qualifying as today.
Oh, tell me
This
about
is for a repeat, yes. So it's not my first one either. I did a few this year. And then I've never had as difficult of a time qualifying as today. Lenders are very, very tight. People don't want to lend money unless you're showing, absolutely everything on pay stubs available, all this and all that.
Yeah.
And then you can produce all that documentation. And even then, you're only getting reduced lending.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's very hard for people to qualify.
100%.
So people that are taking maybe a step back in terms of how they're living their life and the standard of living that they have, and then choosing, for example, to do this with family so they can have an actual piece of the pie, are going to do really well.
100%. I remember
versus the ones that are waiting on the sidelines.
Yeah, exactly. I remember when I was working in the bank, I did a bunch of applications, and it was families that would come in and apply together. And at the time, they were honestly thinking forward, because in my head, and everyone was like, wow, why are they doing that? This and that. And then we look at their like GDS, TDS, the percentages for everything, and like it was beautiful on paper. And then when I asked them, I was like, so like, are you guys all living in there together? They're like, yeah, we all want to buy houses separately and like build. So right now we're just all going to live together, save up money, cut costs, live frugal. And like, honestly, in a year, they ended up coming back. Each one of them applied for a house and got approved. And I was like, that's insane. Like, you don't see that often, that delayed gratification. They work together on it. And I think that collaboration definitely paid out for them. But I think it's also people need to kind of untether themselves from the idea, because growing up, like everyone was taught, you go to school, you get married, you get a house. Everyone is still in that mindset of like, I should be able to get a house. So right now it's kind of like a financial shock for like the basically the generation that is supposed to be buying houses now. So I think they need to maybe shift that realistic expectation in a different way. Because I remember like most people my age were telling me like, don't buy the house, you're going to pay like $10K in like CMHC insurance. And it's like, I don't care about that now because the house doubled in value. It's like you have to think long term with things. It's not a quick flip, especially with stuff like that. So
Very good point. Thanks for Nada sharing
got you,
that
bro.
age group and
Got you, bro.
how people get started. Um, so like, Saif, I wanted you to share, because you share a little bit about your investing side, some of the things that might not work so well, but still cash flowing, thanks to your expertise, building up builder's costs. I would like to touch on a little bit of how you go from a full-time employee being a consultant, right? You were an engineer, you graduated as an engineer. We were chatting offline. You being a consultant for Metrolinx. And how does that turn into you becoming the owner of a construction company, having 20 full-time staff? So how does that work? And what do you learn along the way?
Yeah, so I started off right when I graduated. I was working these remote location jobs in northern BC, and I did the whole fly in, fly out. So you work
Yeah,
long
2 weeks on,
days.
2 weeks off. You got
Exactly.
paid big bucks.
Yes. So then I managed to save a bit of money.
Yeah.
And then I started seeing people in that space are typically older, close to retirement age. And I saw that there's a massive age gap. And the reason that there's a massive age gap is once you get a taste of that kind of salary, you're never getting that again in your life.
No.
Because there's no expenses there.
Yeah.
So people always talk about the money. Oh, look, you're making double. You're not making double. You're making 10 times because you have no expenses.
Wow.
And they pay for food and they pay for everything.
Mm-hmm.
So once you get a taste of that, it's very hard to leave. So I started noticing, I said, you know what? Well, I want the same, call it, I don't want to call it financial freedom, but I want the same comfort in my finances, but in a city where I can have friends and I can have family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So then I moved back to Toronto. I said, okay, no more.
When was that?
Just
Which
flying,
year was
flying.
that?
2000 and early 2016.
Okay. That's still the heydays. It's still good days. Everything's kind of like
Yes.
very flat, right?
It was still going up, but like, look,
Manageable.
everything in hindsight is like,
I
oh,
know.
look, it was good. But at the time, it's like, oh my God, if a house went for 420 instead of 400,
Yeah,
you know,
it's a huge
that's
deal.
crazy.
More.
Yes, exactly. Sold over asking, all those signs. So I moved back here and then I got a consulting job. This is when I first started getting into the transit and rail sector with Metrolinx and Union Station and all that work. The pay was half and the expenses was tenfold.
Do you mind sharing a little bit, just for people's context? Because I have a student, the exactly same job. He shared me his 400K. When he moved up north, he's I think a pipe fitter. He got paid 400K as a contractor. And so
That's usually what like really senior site super could get paid, yes. But that's extremely high.
So now that you already don't work for that job, when you move back to Toronto, what does that salary look like?
60,000 a year. So $30 an hour.
No way.
Yeah.
And you make the move.
Yes.
Wow.
So I made the move because I said, okay, I want to start building something here. So I could see at that point when your salary becomes, call it half, maybe a little bit, but in reality, and then your expenses goes way up.
Yeah.
That's when you start, I started looking at it. I'm like, I'm now paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
Right. But then I had a bunch of money saved up. So I'm like, no, I got to buy it. I got to buy something. So I bought a primary residence, as little as possible money down.
Did you did a not
Cashback
a special cashback mortgage?
I didn't know about that. So I didn't. So I did that. And then I had a little bit of money left over. At the time, like $25,000 left over, which today I can't do anything with. But then someone brought to my attention a rental property. They're like, oh, look at this. This one's here. You just add a door here and then you can have like a basement.
Yeah.
So simple.
Yeah. Legal duplex sounds like.
Yeah. Legal non-conforming.
Oh, okay. Hey,
Guys.
I mean,
It's not legal, but
yeah.
that's what everybody calls the illegal ones. So I could get that. So then that the place went for 400. And then I only needed 5% down. That's 20 grand.
Yeah.
Plus closing costs. Guess how much that is? 25 grand.
Mm.
So I'm like, here, there's one property,
Done.
one rental.
Good
Yes.
days. Yeah.
So I did that. And then that kind of helped me break free from the paycheck to paycheck.
It's one property. It's all it takes.
And then from there, I got a second property. So maybe call it less than a year later. There was a bit of cash flow. There was a bit of equity in there. Plus, I had really become super, super frugal. Wasn't going out, wasn't eating out, none of that stuff. So I saved a little bit too. I saved another like $20,000 or $25,000. And Then another property comes across and it's like, oh, 400, exact same thing as the last one.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, you know what? Final offer, 350. Bam,
Got it.
get it.
Stop.
But it needed work.
Yeah.
So I didn't know anything about construction back then. Well, I worked in construction, but I didn't know specifically in the residential construction
Yeah.
space. So that's when I first started getting exposure to it. So I hired a general contractor.
Yeah.
He did a brutal job, like never picking up their phone, so late. The
No.
quality was absolute garbage. So the guy one day comes in. I'm like, you said this is going to take 3 months. It's 6
Oh.
months today.
I was something 9 months. Don't worry. I
I'm
have
like,
a
this
story
is-
to share. Yeah.
This is 6 months.
Oh.
And I'm like, you're only like 60, 70% done. I'm like, when's this thing going to end? So I told him, honestly, I think I could do a better job than you. And he laughed.
Or you don't know anything yet.
I didn't know anything, no. And then he laughed. So I'm like, okay, you're off the job. And then
Yeah.
what I started doing, the consulting hours were light. It wasn't very difficult. It's like 9 a.m. to like, I don't know, 4:30 or 5
Yeah.
or something.
Start working at night.
So then I started working in the morning and at night.
You're
Super
one of those
early.
guys.
Yeah,
I love it.
super early. And then I take the train to Toronto, come back, and then after work till 10 p.m., wake up in the morning, do the
Sweat
same
equity.
thing.
Respect, man.
Yeah. So I did that for a bit. I ended up finishing that last 30, 40% kind of by myself.
Yeah.
But then I had one guy
That's
kind of
awesome.
helping.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? I think I'm good. I started posting some pictures. People liked it. They're like, hey, can you do this one? I'm like, yeah, let me give you a quote. And then jobs started coming in, but they were tiny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bathroom, kitchen.
No, not even that much yet. No. Like I'm
painting.
yeah, tiny. Like in
Yeah.
the bedroom, little bit of paint, baseboard.
Yeah.
And I remember the first job, I sent the price out, $3,500. That was this price of the job. And then the guy's like, yeah, let's move ahead. When can you start? I'm like, tomorrow. And it finished it in 2 days.
Yeah.
Cost was $500. I'm
Wow.
like, 3,000. I'm like, I don't even make that in the whole month.
That's amazing.
After
Just
tax.
Yes, correct. It's net to your pocket. That
Yeah.
Yeah.
basically the way I saw that is I'm like, this is more than 3 months of work because
Yeah.
really that's how long it's going to take you
Yeah.
to save that.
Yeah.
That's when I started really becoming interested. Why? People always think, it's because, oh, you're greedy financially or anything like that. No, it's a kind of I take it as a symbol of whatever value you're bringing. I felt like, okay, my work is being valued because
Yeah.
somebody is willing to pay for it. And what I didn't like too much about corporate was that you're capped. You are valued whatever your immediate manager or whatever the next person
Your
is.
seniorities, there's politics. And before I quit, I was a mid management. So the more ranking you climb, the marginal more you get paid, a little bit more benefit. But the amount of stress and hours you put in is exponential.
Yeah.
Right. So that's, I don't know if you feel the same, but that's how I felt. So I'm like, one day I'm just like, my stock option trading account, replace my full-time income, 6-figure.
Yeah.
I have something more to do.
And you get your time back. Like it took you 2 days to make like more than a month's worth of income
Yeah.
versus working that whole month and making nothing.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong though. There's a few months I was quite lost. I'm like, I was sitting at home. I was like, I traveled to Spain, good time, 10 days, come back. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? I sit there for like 3 months. I was on my computer, go on YouTube. Be like, you know what? I'll create a YouTube video.
Yeah.
And I remember I still watched my first ever YouTube video. I laugh at it so much. I was looking at a teleprompter and my hands were like shaking. My hands were like this.
Yeah.
Let's fast forward now.
Yeah.
That's all how it started, right? So, anyway, for anyone listening to this, that's my personal story. But back to you, Seif.
Yeah.
We need to see that
That's a good
video.
story. Yeah. True.
So, going back to your story of you go from first property, second property, getting quotes of 3,500, and then what? You make all that money in 3 days. Then what?
So then I'm like, okay, maybe I have something here.
Yeah.
So then I started posting pictures of the work that I did.
Mhm.
And then, there's tons of lead gen websites.
Yeah.
Pay $100 a month, membership, this, that. But the point is you're betting on yourself, which I loved. So I had that income because I had a salary. So I'm like, let me put it towards that. So I put on one lead gen website.
Is it Kijiji?
No, I never went to that because it's
Oh,
like
man.
that I found to be a huge waste of time.
Yeah,
Because
a
people
lot of
just
time
want you
kicker.
to, people just want you to.
So
just
what do you
work.
post then?
So I posted pictures of my work on HomeStars.
Okay, yeah, that's a famous one. Yeah.
Yes. And then they started sending a certain amount of leads
Mm-hmm.
every not every month, every week almost.
Mhm.
It was pretty, I guess, big back then. I don't know how big they are now.
I don't know. I'm
But
not in the building business.
it was pretty
Wrong
big.
person to ask.
It was pretty big then. So then we started pricing all this work.
Yeah.
And the work was all over the place. I said, I cover all the areas from Pickering to Brantford to Niagara.
Wow.
Holy cow. You're willing to
wasn't get-
drive.
Yes, I wasn't getting work anymore. Well, first off, all the leads that we were getting was Toronto and kind of
Yeah.
around the Toronto area,
Yeah.
but nothing was closing. Immense amount of competition. And then I started getting stuff in Hamilton, and then I'd go there, and every single time it's the same thing that happens. I knock at the door, the person opens. Oh, thank God you're here. Nobody wants to show up. Nobody
Really?
is showing up to work. I'm like, wait, what? So then I walk through, and then they show me the work, and I'm like, okay, I give a price. And then they're like, yeah, when can you start? What? That was easy. It wasn't like that in Toronto, because Toronto, you'd be
Competition.
waiting at the door,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then there's 3 other, 4 other, 5 under
Market
contract
At the same
saturated.
time.
Yes, at
Yeah.
the same time, back to back.
Yeah.
So then I go in there, and I'm like, okay, it's going to cost this much. Bam, close a job. I'm like, there we go.
That's
So
amazing.
I show up, and I'm like, I need some help. So hire a helper.
Yeah.
And then I go through one bad helper, second. I think I went through maybe 3 or 4 really bad ones. And then I found a guy. I'm like, okay, this guy's pretty good. And then I would then keep pricing work. And then I sent him out to
Mhm.
do the work.
Wow.
Okay. And then we had 3 jobs, decent sized jobs. At that point, those 3 jobs were about $60,000 for 3 jobs.
Mhm.
So I'm like,
Altogether.
wow.
So 20,
Altogether,
2020.
yeah,
Wow.
more or less. It was
What
like
was that?
30,
Tw-
10, 15.
2017, 2018?
2017, 2018. Yes,
Nice.
Good
exactly.
guess.
Exactly. Yes. So it's like a little bit. It just
Yeah.
started.
Yeah, yeah,
We kind of got one
The
guy.
momentum starting to
Yes.
snowball.
So then we get 3 sites, and I say, okay, do you know anyone that needs work? He's like, yes, my uncle. I'm like, bring him on board. The guy shows up. I'm like, you got boots? You got your tools? Yeah. I'm like, perfect.
Oh
Start.
my God.
Like, this is what has to be done. And then we get another job. Like, what the hell's going on? They're all small, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They're not like jobs. You're not there for months type of thing. And then I asked uncle, you know anyone that needs work? He's like, yeah, my son.
Oh my goodness.
I'm like, bring him on board. And that's how I had my first 3. And they were like the core.
Are they still part of your team now?
As of recently, no. It's been 5 years, but then they sort of had to do their own thing.
Yeah.
The dad is a lot like they're all family, right?
Yeah.
The uncle, and then his what do you call it, nephew, and then the uncle's kid. So the older person is kind of like retirement age. So he had to sort of take some time off and stuff. Like, it's also hard on the body, right? Like,
For
to
sure,
work
yeah.
construction, be on the tools
Yeah.
at that age is tough. So I understood it. It's fine.
Mm.
So that was the first 3. And then they were with me for some time, 4 years, I guess.
Mhm.
And it was pretty good. But then when I had those 3, then I took a step back, and I'm like, okay, I think I'm good at understanding this work and pricing it and giving decent estimates
Yeah.
in terms of how long it's going to take and how much it's going to cost. The quality of the work is obviously there. So then I only focused on that. And then I started sending the guys out to do work.
Mhm.
We got so busy by early 2019. We had about, I can't remember, maybe 5 or 6 sites.
Mm.
I had 8 guys.
Mm.
I was still working my consulting job. I was doing work from home. If the employers listening to this, they're not going to have whatever. That's in
You
the
were doing
past.
the work apparently, so
I was doing, yes.
You're doing it, working very efficiently. How's that?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the one. So I was working efficiently, and I was doing work from home. Back then, there was no work from home. So that was kind of like brand new. Now
Yeah.
it's super popular. And then I went and I asked my manager, I said, I need to take my vacation because I just had so much shit going on personally.
yeah.
Mhm.
He said, no, you can't because this manager's off. And we need you to fill it. I'm like, how can and then it hit me. How can someone tell me when I'm allowed to take my vacation, when I'm not? I said, it's an emergency.
Yeah.
He said, no. So then I said, screw it. I went back to my desk. I printed my 2 weeks notice and I gave it in.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's when I left corporate. It was early 2019.
Wow.
That's amazing.
So fast forwarding to now, you have 20. Like, what does your company look like right now? Like, roughly, like all the full-time paying staff. What does that look like? in
They're
terms of
split between the
breakdown?
office and the field.
Yeah.
And generally it's obviously me And then I have my right hand, my executive assistant, and then PR person as well. And then she's also my property manager. She does both the PR and she does the property management. And then we have an estimator, a project manager, and then a couple of site superintendents as well. And all the rest are the working sort of in the field between flooring installers and drywallers, framers, carpenters, all that stuff.
Yeah, that sounds like a very classic construction. The only difference is that you have PR, then if you don't have enough PR work for this lady to do, then half is property management too. So that's a good mix.
Yeah.
Cool. So like, what are something that through all those experience you want to share with us from your perspective? Like, how old are you now?
32.
Okay, you're 32, I'm 33. So we're very similar, but I'm like, people know me as a part-time investor in real estate and a full-time, 30 minutes per week investor in stock option. So I don't want to take away the real estate investing side or the construction side, but what do you see that you think 30-somewhat-year-old can learn, 20-somewhat-year-old can learn, 40-somewhat-year-old can also learn? What are some piece of things that you see from what you have gone through?
I think it's I think the most common thing, and I was mentioning that offline, is people get too much in if they haven't started, especially in the whole analysis paralysis. You have so much information in front of you that you never make a decision. Sometimes you just have to take a step back. It's like yourself with your ADU. Sometimes it just feels right, and you know it's right, and you know it's going to work in the future.
You know
what the numbers say.
You know why I push it through? Because I can't stop halfway. Once you start it,
exactly.
Oh my God, the cost kept going up. I mean, I can't stop here. If I stop here, I can't rent it out.
Yeah.
Then it's a guarantee.
I already have a basement. I can't just build a basement, not a top. So we just have to push it through. And then we know, okay, that was the saving grace, was Airbnb short-term, mid-term rental. We know it. We have to budget for it. Out of pocket a lot of money, but we don't have investor on it. So that's fine. That was a house we were going to move in. Right? That was me. But then back to you. Right?
Yeah, I think it's the whole analysis paralysis. People take so much time to make a decision because there's way too much information. You got to take a couple pieces of key information and make a decision based on those.
100%.
There's a housing shortage. You're creating value in the lot. You're driving up the cost. It's a desirable property to live in. I don't care about all the rest. What do you think is going to happen for the next 10 rate hikes? I don't care.
Yeah, that's the thing. It doesn't
only
matter.
Focus on what's in your control, in my opinion.
Don't miss out on the now thinking about later, because that's what a lot of people do. Like, there's so many of my friends where I'm like, why didn't you buy a house like when I was buying? And we're all helping each other out with listings. And they're like, yeah, but like just the interest rate might go down later. And I'm like, you let a decision that you could have made at that moment pass you by for a potential. And did that help? Probably not. Probably not. So.
Yeah. So I could go on this for hours and hours, but I think we're already almost 1 hour up. Where can our audience find you? Where do you want to guide them?
You can go to our website, new4.com, or we're super active on social media. It's New4 Inc., INC, and we have a lot of information on there as well. We post there a lot. So if anybody is interested in the construction renovation space, or just you want to get an idea of, you think you have a property that can get an ADU or build an ADU on it, then we're the guys you need to talk to.
Yeah. So if you guys want to build an ADU or even just a legal duplex, before you build an ADU, want to test Seif out, go to his channel to check him out. Thanks for coming on.
Sounds good. Thank you guys
Appreciate
for having me.
it.